Alright everyone, today I'm going to be focusing on the mistranslations in cryptozoology and how these mistranslations can affect cryptozoological reports as well as what people think the cryptid actually is. I'm going to be focusing on some more obscure cryptids that I've happened upon within recent months and some more well-known cryptids that I've discussed in previous videos like the Bembe. One of the particular cryptids has a few translations associated with its most commonly agreed upon name, that muddy the water slightly in what it is perceived to be. And what I wanted to discuss here really is this muddying of the waters being the key driver for this cryptid being transformed into something that it isn't meant to be. Like the Tapirê Iauara, for example, I'm going to be focusing on this one for the majority of this video. It's going to be at the forefront of the video. And I think with this one in particular, it's been misrepresented as something that it isn't from Brazilian culture. It has multiple different names, the most notable one that I have picked up on being the onça d'água, translating roughly from Portuguese to water jaguar. Now, I don't think that the Tapirê Iauara is a jaguar, like a lot of people have been saying. I do believe, in fact, that the Tapirê Iauara's identity is more akin to the river otter found in the Amazon River. Now, the reason why I say this is that onça d'água is a term commonly attributed to these giant river otters. And analysing the Portuguese term onça d'água, the most common translation that I could find for this term was it meaning jaguar of the waters. Now, this does not mean that there is a Tapirê Iauara that's commonly described as having jaguar-like features roaming the Amazon waters. What it may more likely mean is that there is an otter roaming the waters who has characteristics similar to jaguars, like their agility, their voracious appetite for their prey, their strength, their bite, their claws, even their head shape and their skull morphology, etc. Think of the Lusca of the Caribbean. Now, the confusion with the Lusca is that Lusca means half shark, half octopus, yet this is not necessarily the case. With the Lusca is said to have characteristics of both the shark and the octopus. This does not mean that there is a half shark, half octopus roaming the waters. All it means is that there is a creature who has the agility of a shark and the violence in its nature towards its prey of a shark, and the stealth and almost ninja-like disguise in the water and ninja-like ability in the water that's able to disguise itself and sneak up and ambush its prey like an octopus. Looking morphologically at an otter, I suppose you could almost say that it is the water's answer to felines. It has the claws, it has the almost feline or cat-like head without the pointy ears, but it's more an elongated head on an otter, and it has a sleek body, perfect for underwater travel, very streamlined, and it's good at swimming due to this factor. Now, the most famous report I could find of the Tapirê Iauara is in Jacques Cousteau's book, which is called The Cousteau's Amazon Journey. Now, he describes how the natives in the Amazonian rainforest and remote areas of the Amazonian rainforest believe that the Tapirê Iauara is almost a god of the Amazon rainforest, and it sort of wanders the Amazon rainforest, protecting it. Now, to me, this almost feels like it's being portrayed as a more of a spiritual animal here, and an animal that is part of tradition that instills hope in the natives of the area that their area is being protected and conserved. Now, one interesting link that I found between river otters and the Tapirê Iauara, they both have a common theme of a desire to be conserved or a desire to conserve an environment. Now, the desire to conserve an environment comes from the Tapirê Iauara, and it's characteristic of basically being a massive environmentalist. And the desire to be conserved comes from the Amazonian river otter, the giant river otter, and the native people's desire to conserve it. It is a very important species in Brazilian culture, often representing the wonders of the Brazilian rainforest and the Amazonian rainforest in general, and how preserved it is and how biodiverse it is. It's a very important part of Brazilian culture in representing this, and it shows their heritage and their almost their natural blueprint and their ecosystem. It's a vital part of their ecosystem, because the river otters are actually what is known as an indicator species. And an indicator species is an animal, an organism that you are able to discern through its presence in the ecosystem that the environment is healthy. Now, Brazilians seeing the Amazonian river otter, the giant river otter, in their ecosystem would be a direct indicator that their environment is healthy and thriving and full of biodiversity, which is exactly what the Tapirê Iauara is said to also represent. It's said to be a god of the ecosystem, and it's said that its presence indicates a healthy ecosystem and a protective sphere around their ecosystem. It represents the same assuredness that stems from the sightings and presence of the river otters in the Amazon River. And I think people like Jacques Cousteau were actually rather misinformed, not by the natives, but by their own interpretation of what the Tapirê Iauara was. I think when the natives of the upper Amazonian rainforest were describing what the Tapirê Iauara was and what it represented, more importantly, I think Jacques Cousteau took this and ran with it, taking all the accounts of it being a water jaguar, or the size of a jaguar with these droopy ears and hostile attitude, which, by the way, a hostile attitude is often synonymous with otters. You know, despite the photos you might see of them holding hands, they are voracious in their appetite for other creatures that live in the Amazon rainforest, and they are violent predators. Despite how fuzzy and cute they might look, look up some photos of them predating on snakes and other animals in the Amazon rainforest. And it's often also described in accounts how the Tapirê Iauara has this same thirst for prey in the Amazon rainforest, and will often attack boats. Now, I don't believe that the river otters in the Amazon actively attack boats. Prove me wrong, I don't know. They might do, they might not. My opinion is that they don't. And I think that this has been one of the many features of the Tapirê Iauara that have been exaggerated. And the truth has been stretched massively, probably to about the size of the Amazon rainforest. And I think it's been stretched to fit Jacques Cousteau's narrative, and it's been stretched to overshadow the natives' account, which I find tremendously disrespectful, because the Tapirê Iauara, in my opinion, let's get this out there, this is my overall opinion, it does not exist. I think it does exist, but not in the form that Jacques Cousteau described. I think it exists in a more spiritual form, and it exists as an assurance, in the form of an assuredness that the Amazonian rainforest and its environment is protected, much like the assuredness that the river otter provides. I think it is much more likely that the Tapirê Iauara would be more appropriate in being designated to the river otter rather than any other fantastical beast.